Alrighty, welcome everyone. We're excited you're here to join us. My name is Miranda Yiris, and our speaker today is Pete Odell, co-founder and CEO of Swan Island Networks. Please feel free to type any questions you have during this presentation into the chat window on the right side of the screen, and we'll do our best to answer them in the Q&A period at the end of the session. Also, feel free to take screenshots, and we are going to upload this recording of the webinar online. And with that, I'll let Pete take it away.
Great, thanks, Miranda. So hi, everybody, I'm Pete Odell, and we're going to talk to you today about security predictions and in fact, a number of other predictions that we've assembled. And so on our website or on our demonstration site for TX360, our product, we have a predictions dashboard, which is actually very interesting. We'll show you some segments of that and talk through that during the presentation. So we're going to make this really fast today. I went to a webinar the other day where the person talked really fast and gave out a lot of information, but made the presentation available for anything that you missed. That worked out really well in these kind of COVID times, or sometimes the Zoom meetings drag. So I'm going to talk fast. If you have questions, ask them. My email was on the front screen. You can email me anything that comes up. We're going to talk a little bit about us, global situational awareness, some prediction highlights based on a paper we wrote, and a number of things that we accumulated into our predictions dashboard. And then if you have Q&A, we'll answer them. And then if you want, we'll do a demo of our product at the end and also point you to a few good resources. So quick intro, you can read my background. I do have a couple of interesting books. I think they're interesting since I wrote them. One is on cybersecurity, some of the key issues organizations face. It was written in 2015, still very appropriate today. Nothing's really changing in the cyber world except for the number of tools that are proliferating out there and the increase in threats. And Silver Bullets, which is about interoperable data, a key to making technology work together without a lot of programming. So allowing the data to flow back and forth. And then I have a new one I've been working on for a long time. I think I'll finish it this year. But if anybody's interested in being a collaborator, I'd love to chat with you about that. Our company is based in Portland, Oregon. We're working, everybody's working remotely. I'm actually in Alexandria, Virginia. And we have two B2B, business-to-business cloud software platforms. TX360, which is our enterprise command center platform used by multinational companies around the world to track threats. And then we have a very lightweight product called TX Global, which still has many of the capabilities of TX360, but is far easier to use, far more affordable for smaller businesses, and also for nonprofits who can potentially license that and use that as a way to resell to their members. We work with Allied Universal as a technology partner. They're one of the largest security firms in North America, and in a few months, if their merger with G4S goes through, they'll be the largest global security company with over 750,000 security guards and other people to support that company. Our technology is Microsoft-based, all written in the USA, and we've been around for quite a while with 15 years of innovative software solutions, both with government and corporations, which is our current focus. So just to start with a little global situational awareness, 2020 was terrible, and 21 started off pretty bad. Things seem to be getting a little bit better. We've got some hopeful outcomes coming with the vaccine, hopefully with the economic leap forward as we head towards herd immunity, and some new U.S. leadership on some of the global issues, back into the climate accords, hopefully back into a couple other agreements where we're exercising some of America's leadership. The other side is there's still plenty of known threats out there. We've got a big civil unrest, big alert that was announced yesterday through the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI. We've got U.S. hurricane season, wildfire season, Australia bushfires. When you look globally, volcanic and earthquake activity has been very fast and emerging lately. And then there's this concept called gray rhinos. And gray rhinos are things that some people call black swans. The way the author, it's a recent book that's been written, the way the author differentiated them is if you know about them and you can conceive them, they're not really a black swan. A black swan is something totally unexpected and out of the blue. But the gray rhinos are things that could happen, like a mutated COVID, like a grid outage, those kinds of things. So something to keep in mind, new term you might want to throw out at your next strategy session. And then this is a slide, one of the key slides from the World Economic Forum risk report for 2021. They went out and surveyed people around the world about both top risks and by likelihood and by impact. So, we're likely to have a lot of extreme weather, but the impact in fact is pretty far down the list compared to some of the bigger things. And infectious diseases probably got overly rated this year because everybody's under restriction with COVID. It's moved up dramatically and taken a lot of center stage. So everybody's going to be thinking about pandemics for probably 10 years. One of our first predictions is around uncertainty and the speed of change. If you've lived through the last 20 years, you've seen, incredible things happen, and a simple prediction we have is you haven't seen anything yet, right? Buckle your seatbelt because it's going to be a bumpy ride. A lot of different change areas, the pandemic response, we're learning a huge amount. That's going to translate over into other medical breakthroughs. We've got social change and unrest happening around the world, and particularly in the US. We've got a new, US administration in Washington, DC. We've got huge technology change. We'll talk about that. And then global climate changes that are happening, right? Some of the factors around that are, 24/7 news, social media, some active disinformation campaigns that are driving that. And then the way we would talk about mitigators for your corporation is, situational awareness, watching what's coming at you, proactivity, taking steps towards when things happen, having a rapid response, being able to prevent or mitigate that problem, looking at innovation, and then looking at an integrated approach across both intelligence about what's going to happen, the people that you have in your organization who can respond, and the technology they have to do that. By making that an integrated approach versus a series of siloed approaches, we think that's a way to mitigate the uncertainty and speed of change. We also think there's going to be a lot of economic recovery that is uneven around the world. Obviously, in the United States, we've got a new administration. We hope that there are a lot of pent-up demand and saved dollars. The saving rate's been extremely high throughout the pandemic for people with money. But it's also going to be variable by industry, right? The airline travel may come back faster than the cruise lines. Hotels may come back, faster than some of the other industries. And so, be very, very, very variable. Similarly with global, right? Vaccine distribution is going to take time to get around the 8 billion people in the world. There's a whole set of issues about travel where, we're going to have a vaccine passport, or you're going to have a negative test, or you're going to have both. So what's unknown? And, the way to mitigate this is continually monitoring and making real-time adjustments. It's so important to keep track of information continually. And we think this will be kind of a jerky changing type of recovery. On the work environment front, our company has moved to completely remote. We'll certainly go back to the office in some way, shape, or form, but I doubt it will be the way it was in the old days, right? We've got the issue of our company's going to make vaccines mandatory for their employees before they allow them to come back with the other employees in the company. And a lot of people are taking a look at business travel. Is it worth it, right? If you've sat on the sidelines for a year and you haven't taken a bunch of business trips, you may be dying to go, but at the same time, you've probably been able to accomplish just about everything that you have, virtually. And so the question is going to be, is it worth, $5,000 for a flight, a hotel, a trade show fee or conference fee? Is that all going to be worthwhile when you start thinking about what you've learned? And we may see people moving from the cities to remote areas because of some new technology that's coming out and the fear of another, very densely packed pandemic. And we think there'll be new laws, new norms coming out around, people working both, from home and remotely, or some combination of this. And we think from a prediction standpoint, it's going to take a little while to sort out, probably the next 5 years. We think there's a wide range of options depending upon the type of company that you work for, but that we're not going back to the old normal, and that the traffic may stay down for a lot of us that deal with commuting here and there. On the security and climate change side, we think severe weather is going to continue to increase. We've been in a 7-year hot stretch. 2020 damages from severe weather are very high, 210 billion around the world. And the U.S. was 95 billion. And the U.S. was about twice what the average for the last 40 years was. So definitely on the high side. And you've got, a lot of water, flooding, hurricane, rain, snow, but you've also got drought and heat driving a lot of fires, especially in the West this year. Oregon was totally smoked in, as well as California, for several days due to the incredible fires. And then some of our customers had supply chain disruption because a major road was closed in the middle of Colorado, causing hundreds of miles of rerouting around that particular way through the state. So some other issues around security and climate change. We think it's going to get worse before it gets better. We think the global focus that's being put on this problem should help eventually. And there's some amazing technology that may help slow the problem or actually start to reverse the problem. So we think a way to mitigate that, proximity-based alerting, which is knowing where your facilities are and watching for alerts that are around those facilities, and planning for resilience. So knowing that there's going to be some problems, you're going to have to figure out how to bounce back and have some contingencies in place to handle those and be able to monitor that in real time. On the emerging technology side of things, we think there's a lot of things that are moving around the chessboard. And so an example of this is when the digital camera was first invented back in the 1990s, very early by Kodak, it was deemed not very important, not very useful because the resolution was so low. But every year that resolution doubled. And as you got up to where suddenly going from a megabyte or a megapixel to 2 megapixels to 4 megapixels to 8 megapixels, sorry about that. The digital camera suddenly took off because it was happening on the second half of the chessboard. And there's a whole series of technologies that are growing exponentially and will be doubling in a big way and show up in a huge projections. So one of those is the LEO-based satellites that are going up into the sky from Starlink that should enable high-speed internet to virtually every inch on the planet. Intelligent video systems that'll actually allow real-time detection of things like somebody carrying a gun, somebody who is on a threatened a list of people who would threaten employees, being able to license plate recognition on their car, and being able to send an alert is key. Similarly with sensors, sensors are going faster, smaller, cheaper. They're being loaded into your phone. They're being put in devices that you can carry, you can wear. And with this satellite internet, they'll be able to be a lot more distributed than they have been. Similarly, with artificial intelligence, we see that accelerating. In my mind, it's still on the first half of the chessboard. It's going to have gigantic implications over the next 10 years, and it's growing very quickly. But what's coming up sooner, I think, is the combination of analytics plus well-structured data feeding these early AI integrations. That's going to grow quickly and provide a lot of benefits to a lot of different systems, especially in the security world. And then something else to watch from an emerging technology standpoint is what's called a combinate solution. So a combinate solution is something where you're taking several emerging technologies and putting it together. So one example here is having a drone that's suddenly AI-based in terms of its video and sensors. It can connect over high-speed Wi-Fi because of the satellite internet. It's being enabled by a whole series of capabilities to provide technologies and access that have not been a major thing in the past. From a security standpoint, which is the business we're in and what we'll focus on for a lot of the rest of the presentation, we don't see blockchain, quantum computing, or virtual reality impacting security in the short term, certainly in the long term. And in general, from the prediction side, stunning advances over the next 10 years. I mean, just an amazing set of changes. In the security industry, we see continued consolidation. In 2020, you saw a number of companies purchased and consolidated together. First thing in 2021, Allied Universal, who's one of our partners, announced they were actually buying G4S and Secure America, which will make them the world's largest security company with about 750,000 employees. The other thing that's emerging is this idea of integrated security, that instead of a company having to have 20 different systems from 20 different vendors with 20 different contracts, 20 different training capabilities, and then a whole series of expensive integrations, that more and more companies will provide an integrated set of security capabilities that'll work together out of the box and be managed by a security provider. So we think that's going to get a lot smoother, for companies, and that a lot of large companies have already been pushing for this with their various vendors. We also think proactive monitoring will continue to grow. The idea of getting ahead of problems, and with all this new technology allowing you to have a very good understanding of what's going on around the world in terms of your facilities, that'll be important, and that can be combined with a resilience focus, the ability to have something happen, but be able to work around it as an organization. So it's like, wow, our major call center got taken out. Well, guess what? We've got a virtual call center capability that we put up a year ago. We'll switch over to that, no problem, and we're going to keep on going. So a lot of focus being put on this idea of resilience, making sure you don't have single points of failure, and being able to do that. In the guarding world, the guards, similarly to the police, are kind of a trend where, the higher end, higher capability people get it first. First you saw the military carrying cameras, carrying body cams, those types of things that moved down to the police forces. I think you'll see that continued shift into the guarding world, where the guards will be able to provide more real-time information that'll be integrated into different security systems. And you're already starting to see more robots that can do repetitive things, like checking license plates in a parking lot. It's like, oh, this car's been here for 2 days. Maybe we should find out if it's stolen or if it's been abandoned. And we also think executive protection for executives traveling around the world will recover, because people will start traveling again and be more cautious with, especially with key executives for major companies. On the cybersecurity side, the prediction, unfortunately, is pretty easy to make. The attacks are going to continue. They're going to grow. They're going to get more sophisticated. And, it's a generational problem. We've got software that's been created over the last, 30, 40 years that companies are relying on. A lot of it was made, pre-internet. A lot of it was made without good security in mind, without the idea that it was going to be attached to a worldwide network, where somebody in China, somebody in Russia, or somebody in their bedroom could reach in and actually impact those systems. So we have a lot of work to do as a world and a civilization to fix that problem, but it's probably going to take, a whole new generation of computer systems that are being developed today. Resilience, again, we touched on that earlier. It's critical. How do you handle an attack? How do you recover? How do you make sure you don't lose the continuity of operations inside your business? That's important to have. And we've injected a whole new layer of attacks by everybody working at home. So suddenly, by having 30,000 employees, working at home for a gigantic company, it suddenly allows a whole set of other attacks. You're sharing sensitive information on people's hard drives, where could be stolen. You've got exposed to people that are not employees, like kids and spouses. So a whole set of issues there. And one of the approaches to mitigating that is kind of a crown jewels approach, that the things that are most important should be guarded and protected a lot more rigidly than the kind of the regular scope of things, right? So it's like, oh, we had our website defaced. Well, that's unfortunate, but we protected our drug study where we invested $1 billion and that data didn't get stolen. So it's a moderated approach based on what's important for a particular organization. Continually, the board of directors has a hard time aligning with the information technology people to make sure that the company strategy is aligned with the IT strategy, and proactive monitoring can be very helpful here. And my biggest worries are, attacks on critical infrastructure. So somebody taking out the power grid in a region or in a city or for a particular company. And then you also have the problem of insider attacks, somebody being able to, as an employee who has unfettered access to information, being able to set up a very large cyber attack for somebody outside or inside. So that's kind of a quick overview. I wanted to let everybody know about our predictions dashboard, and the predictions dashboard is a consolidation of the best things we could find across the entire internet. So there's a wide variety of topics and authors. We pointed to those. We give everybody the credit of authorship. This is not information we wrote, except for some of the insights I shared from my report, which is listed on the dashboard. These are the credentials. And if you email us, we also have a PDF version of this paper. So I think you'll find it, very interesting. This is an example of what it looks like. So cyber predictions, technology predictions, health and climate, economy, physical security and threats, and then also some very good video predictions by some futurists and economics from some of the larger banks around the world. So I'd invite you to take a look at that. Let me, I'll show you what it looks like very quickly. So this is what our TX Global product looks like. The predictions dashboard will show up. If you use those links, it'll actually allow you to go and click to any one of those, inserted links that we have. So very, very nicely done. One of our analysts spent a ton of time, reviewing content and checking that out. So I encourage you to take a look at that. And then just for fun, there's some way out there predictions that we came across in kind of the pursuit of these different prediction documents. So, the robots, artificial intelligence, there's some people that think the robots are going to take over and own the world and basically get rid of humans. There's another school of thought that says the robots are going to take over, they're going to do all the work, and humans are going to have it great for the next 1,000 years. We're going to have a human renaissance beyond all compare. There's some very big worries about climate migrations, where the equator starts to become unlivable because it gets hotter and hotter, forcing people north and south. A much larger version of what you've seen in Northern Africa with people migrating north to Europe. Planetary migrations, where Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos both have their eye on colonizing Mars and moving people other places. And then eternal lifespan, where if you get 50 more years of healthy life because of a breakthrough, during that 50 years, they'll invent another 100-year stretch and eventually end up at eternity. There's some predictions out there that the first immortal person is alive today. And if you're immortal, you got to be connected to the web electronically, as opposed to having to use your keyboard or trying to use Siri or Alexa to get your information. Right. So that's it. And just from an overall standpoint, we'll wrap up. See if people have some questions. And from a summary standpoint, we think the risks are abounding out there. This is going to be a very bumpy decade. And we think there's a lot of physical things out there, both natural and man-made, that we got to worry about. There's also a whole set of cyber, problems that are continue. And there's one of the predictions we didn't include was Nostradamus. So one of Nostradamus's predictions from however long ago he made them, I think it was like 500 years ago, he basically says we're going to have a sunstorm, which is the equivalent of a solar EMP, where very large sunspots or plasma bursts on the sun can actually disrupt electronics in the US. There was one back in the late 1800s where all the telegraph wires in a certain part of the country burst into flame because of the incredible solar radiation that showed up one day. And so we're very exposed as COVID didn't have you freaked out enough. We're very exposed from that standpoint. Most electronic gear is completely unshielded and vulnerable to a large solar EMP. So it's one of those gray rhinos where it's very low probability, but it would have a very large impact. And then these, since we're a security company and we focus on situational awareness, these are the things we think of as in terms of actions you can take proactively for your corporations and your organizations, but also for your personal life, right? and that is, keeping watch, knowing what's coming at you is very important. Being ready, if you can get early mitigation and prevent something from happening, it can save a lot of lives, time, and continuity. And then think about resilience, right? If you don't have a go bag, where if you had to, there are people in California last year that had 15 minutes to get out of their house because of forest fires. And literally, if you haven't thought about that ahead of time, you should. You should know what you'd take and what you'd do. And then you should always be thinking about, who can help you, in on a dark day, right? Who could be your surge partner? And who can you team up with to improve, both awareness and cut costs in terms of information sharing? So if you're a business, sharing information with other businesses that are similar to you in your industry can be very, very beneficial, but also sharing with people regionally. So if you have a threat, like our company in Portland has a large earthquake threat that's been out there for 15, 20, 30 years, and is, sometime in the next 300 years is going to be a very large earthquake in the Northwest. It's going to impact Portland, Oregon quite a bit. So planning for things like that becomes very important, and thinking about teams who can address those types of issues. So with that, I think I did deliver on my promise to talk fast, deliver a lot of information. Miranda, did we get any questions along the way?
Hey, Pete. Yeah, thank you so much. We do have a couple of questions that have come in.
Okay.
So one question we have is, what are you most worried about personally this year?
I have two big worries. One is COVID, because like everybody else, I'm a little paranoid about that. So I'm worried that could mutate into something that the vaccine doesn't cover, and we get right back into the same mess we've been in for the last 10 months. But the one that really worries me is some kind of major electrical outage. We're sitting here locked up in our houses, working remotely, and it's all done through the magic of electricity and all the computing infrastructure built on top of that. You pull the you pull the plug on my laptop. It's just going to run for 4 or 5 hours, but then after that, it's about as useful as a brick. So that concerns me tremendously.
As a good, I guess, follow-up question to that, we have, what are some things that we can do to secure our businesses, considering the robust threat landscape described in this presentation?
A lot of it is thinking about the problem, and it's obviously very different if you have if you have a convenience store, one location in one town, right? Then you've got very specific threats of what might affect you. However, you've probably got a global supply chain to get the supplies to your store that you have to worry about. So, but then, we have clients that are multinational companies that have as many as 15,000 different locations around the world. They're in a continual monitoring cycle, and that's really the first step, is knowing, what threats are out there, and then what are emerging, and what should I start getting ahead of right now that I can do that. So if a hurricane shows up and in 5 days it has a potential to impact you, the time to get ready is 5 days ahead when it gets announced, right? Not waiting until the day before and saying, oh, I guess we better get ready for the, for the hurricane. So, the proactive, planning, business continuity, resilience thinking, contingency thinking, and then people still, until the robots take over, people become really the critical part. Because sometimes the best of plans can go completely out the window if the wrong person happens to be out of town. And we had that in 9/11. We had a couple of customers that had that happen, where their key team that were counted on as the main people to make something happen happened to be out of town and could not get home for a week. So they had some huge impacts on their resilience plan without any of the the kind of virtual capabilities that we have today. So that's what I would say about that.
Great. This question might already be answered, but the last one I have here, what are companies doing to be proactive about these risks?
Companies are out acquiring technologies. Some companies are out just having people, scan the web from a browser standpoint, from a social media standpoint. Our industry is all about is all about being able to assemble information as it's occurring. So that's kind of a perfect lead in to, if anybody does want to stay and see a quick demo, I'll walk through what we do from that standpoint. And these are the resources that I mentioned, the Global Risk Report, Swan Island Networks prediction document, which is on our website, the predictions dashboard. We can either send you the demo site, or you can access it on the credentials that I gave you earlier to our demo site. And then also I want to just shout out for InfraGard. I'm an InfraGard member. It's an excellent public-private partnership sponsored by the FBI with about 78,000 people around the country that are all aligned around the domestic terrorism, international terrorism, all types of security threats. So an excellent organization. I think one of the best things I think they just had their 25th birthday today, actually. So with that, I'll just walk you through what our TX360 product looks like. We have two versions of our product. One is TX Global, but for big corporations, the way it works is there's a series of steps that you walk through. We have over 5,000 channels that we monitor around the world. Last month, we pulled in about 15 million pieces of information. That information can be customized to match a business, to tie it to how close one of their physical assets is. We can add internal information, we can add cameras, we can add sensors, a whole set of things to allow kind of a single pane of glass, if you want to use that metaphor, or common operating picture, or user-defined operating picture, depending upon where you're from. But having the information that shows up first is very important. That information can then be tied to where are the assets around the world, right? Where are my stores? Where are my, where are my office buildings? Where are my people? Where's my supply chain? So that suddenly I have a worldwide map with all the things that impact me, and with things happening 24/7. So those assets can be used to produce field-based smart alerts, which you'll see here. Real-time delivery via email and text out to people in the field on an automated basis, so they're getting that information very quickly, but also with context of, here's the original news item that was published. Here's how far it is from your particular corporate asset, and then other information as well. So very rich information that can be delivered. And then for people in the command center, or people inside their office buildings or at home with a Mac, a PC or a tablet, we actually have these rich dashboards that are continually updated around a topic. So this is an example of a London common operating picture, where news from London, both from the news media, from social media, access to some of the cameras that are available publicly, weather, all that can be merged into a dashboard that can be continually updated and help a company that has facilities in London monitor what's going on around those facilities. So that's some examples. We have dashboards around COVID, so we're able to bring in information there. We're very easy to use and rapid to deploy, and that's kind of the overview. So with that, if we had any other questions show up, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, I appreciate everybody coming, and we'll hope to see you on one of our future seminars.